Ooh, okay. Don't sit too far back in that chair. Hi, I'm Michi, and as a fair warning before we get started, I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of my medical issues. And I will be showing a picture of one of my x-rays. So if that's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, maybe this isn't the video for you. So for those of you who are looking to stick around, I want to talk a little bit about what's wrong with me. I don't mean mentally, we're gonna leave that one alone for now, but what may not be evident through my videos is that I have back problems, and pretty, I don't want to say super significant, because obviously I'm really mobile. I do a lot of things, but I do have back problems that impact my mobility, my comfort, on a lot of my daily living. I have a condition that's known as degenerative disc disease. It's actually a very common thing. A lot of people have it, even people my age, and you would never know it because it doesn't impact them that much. But in my case, excuse me, it does impact me a lot. I have especially a lot of problems in my cervical spine, in my neck, and I've had 2 surgeries so far. And I have a 3-level fusion. So from C4 to C5, from C5 to C6, and from C6 to C7 are all fused. There's 2 plates and 10 screws. I've got a really great x-ray picture of it. My doctors are absolutely amazing. But basically what happened is most of the discs in my neck are either herniated or they are thinning or bulging. And in the case of the ones that I had fused, they were putting a lot of pressure on my nerves. And so I was starting to lose the use of my hands. My first surgery was kind of a gradual onset where over time I was having more and more issues with my hands. My left hand in particular was causing me a lot of problems. I had like come and go numbness of my last 2 fingers and like up my arm some. And I would frequently drop things. And I also just would get a lot of neck pain, and I still get a lot of neck pain up here. My second surgery was a little bit unexpected. It was very sudden onset. A couple of years ago, I started having some really intense pain, like between my shoulder blades, that just kind of gradually got worse through the night or through the day and then into the night, and it wasn't responding to ibuprofen or ice or anything. I woke up in the middle of the night and was in like 10 out of 10 pain. Like it was really, really bad. Had to go to the emergency room, got referred back to my surgeon, and it turned out that I had herniated the disc below my original surgery site, and it caused a really severe bulge. It was putting a lot of pressure on the nerves that go down my right arm. So I actually lost the feeling of my thumb, my first and my second finger completely. I had almost no grip strength. Like I couldn't even like lift a paper bag, like literally nothing. I could barely hold the weight of my own hand. And it took a couple of weeks actually to get surgery. But once I did get that surgery, mostly it's all better, but I do still have some numbness in my hand. I still get frequent pain between my shoulders from, I just have limited mobility now, especially to the right. I have a harder time moving in those directions. And that can cause a lot of problems for me moving around. It can cause a lot of stiffness. And I also still have a lot of other issues in my spine. I still have herniations above my surgery site that we're not addressing yet because they haven't, caused enough of an issue yet. And I also have some issues in my lower back that are kind of undefined right now. As far as we can tell, there isn't any like major herniation down there, but it's starting to cause problems in my hips and my legs. And it can cause a lot of problems for me when I am trying to stand, for instance, for long periods of time. I have a hard time walking for long periods of time. And that probably sounds funny because if you've seen my other videos, you've seen that I have a tendency to make big things. I'm hauling heavy stuff around. But just know that like when I'm doing those things, it also comes at a cost. And that is usually that after I've done one of those things, I am laid up for several days. I usually get very, very sore and have a hard time moving. And so I have to be very mindful about those sorts of things. But it's also really hard for me to just put those things aside, because those are the things that I truly love and enjoy doing. I like making things, I like building things, and I always have. So it's really hard for me to put those aside. So there's definitely always a cost benefit analysis that goes into my projects. And I also utilize help. Like I have my housemates often help me with like the heavy lifting of stuff if I need to load, you know, lumber into my van or something, you know, or if I need to move things around, things that are really big and heavy, they will frequently help me with. And also I just recognize that, you know, even if I'm not doing something, I'm going to be in a significant amount of pain on a daily basis. And it doesn't really matter. Like I'm going to be in pain whether I do it or I don't do it. It's just kind of the intensity. Anyway, that's a short history of my spine. And all that is to say that I have a hard time standing for a long period of time, especially if I'm standing in one place. If I'm moving around, it can be a little bit easier, but standing in one spot for a long period of time causes a lot of pain in my back and also in my shoulders. So I frequently have to take sitting breaks. And so a few years ago, I got one of these. And this is really cool, actually. It is a telescoping stool. And I think this thing is just, it's super cool. And I love that it is pretty, sorry, that was probably a loud noise right next to my mic. I love that it collapses down really, really small. It's not the lightest thing, but I don't typically walk for long periods of time. I have a hard time with that. So usually, you know, if I know I'm going to be someplace for a long time, this goes with me in my car. Or, you know, it might go like in a little cart for me to carry, or not carry, you know, roll along so that I have the ability to sit. Now, something that you may have noticed about me through my videos is that I like things to be cute and whimsical. And this ain't it. It is very functional. It is very practical for me, but it is not cute. And so I want to fix that. I want to make it cute. So because it already, I'm going to make a big noise again, I apologize. Because it already has kind of this cute shape, I don't know how well you can see that, kind of this, you know, telescoping, larger base, you know, smaller, I think it looks like a mushroom. So it's going to be a mushroom. I'm going to turn this thing into more of a mushroom. And also in the course of that, I'm going to add some padding, because sitting on a hard surface for a long time is also really hard on my back. So I need a little cushy for my princess butt. So that's what I'm going to do. And the goal is to make this look like a cute little toadstool. Get it? Toadstool. It's going to be a toadstool. I think I'm hilarious. So the color already off the bat is not great. It's black, very basic, very utilitarian, very boring. So I'm going to start by painting it white, I think. And I am under no illusion that the white is really going to stick. This is plastic, and because of this, the nature of it, like opening and closing, that white is going to peel over time, but at least for a little while, it's going to be really cute. And maybe someday I will get one in white because they exist, but I already have this one. So I'm going to work with what I have. And then I'm going to make basically a little cushion cover that's going to go over the top of this that will give it a little bit of padding and also will look like a mushroom. So let's get started.
I decided to start this project with the fun part by making the little polka dots for the top of the toadstool. I started with some white fabric that has a subtle polka dot pattern to it, which I thought would be really cute. And then I ironed on some freezer paper onto the back of it. That way I had a nice stiff surface to be able to draw out my polka dots without the fabric moving too much. This worked really, really well. It's the first time I've done that, but it worked great. I was able to use a number of different circle objects to create some different spots, and then I just carefully cut them out, and once that was done I could just peel off the freezer paper backing. So this worked really well. 10 out of 10 technique. Next up was spray painting the stool white. It did take a couple of coats to do this because the black was showing through the white, but once I got a couple of coats on there, it looks just fine. A pro tip for anyone who's going to be doing a lot of spray painting: get yourself a good respirator. This stuff is really bad for your lungs and you don't want to be breathing it in. Once the paint was dry on the stool, it was time to get started on putting together that mushroom top. I measured first to make sure I knew how big my circle would be. Then I folded my red fabric into quarters and measured out how big the radius was of my stool. This involved a little bit of math, but not too bad. Basically, it's just half the diameter. So that's what I did. And then made sure to add a little bit of extra for seam allowance. I just use a ruler from the corner to mark it out, and then just kind of roughly eyeballed it to get the general curve shape. I went ahead and did this twice so that I would have an inside and an outside of my stool cover. That way I would be able to stuff it with some cotton batting so that it would be nice and cushy. With my pieces all cut out, it was time to start placing those little polka dots. Peeling off the backing was so satisfying, and it was fun to kind of arrange them and figure out where I felt like they should go. And then I used this fabric Mod Podge on the back of the spots just to help tack them in place so that they would stay when I went to go stitch them down. I wanted to make sure they weren't going to wiggle around or pucker at all when I was trying to stitch them. To stitch them, I used a satin stitch on my sewing machine and just kind of freehanded it. I've never done this before, but it wasn't actually too hard. They got a little bit lumpy bumpy on some of them, like they're not perfect circles, but I think that just kind of adds to the charm. I mean, what in nature is really perfect? So I was really happy with how they came out. Once I got the two halves of the little mushroom top sewn together, I flipped it inside right, and then I just used the pokey edge of a ruler to push out all of the seams and make sure they were all nice and straight. And then, like a big girl, I used my iron and I actually pressed them flat. Yay! Aren't you proud of me? And next was the fun part of actually getting to stuff the Toadstool cushion. This was just some batting that I had lying around from a previous project, and I just basically stuffed this thing as about as full as I could get it because I wanted it to be nice and squishy and tufted. Of course, if I had really thought this through, I would have saved this step for just a little bit later because it actually made the next step quite a bit more difficult. That next step being adding the edge that would go over the stool and kind of cinch it in place with some elastic. So I decided to make it white, like a lot of mushrooms are white on the underside, and then of course adding tons and tons of gathers so that it looks all like frilly, like mushrooms do on their underside. Basically, to do this, I just took a really, really big long piece of fabric, and then I folded over one edge to give it a hem, and then I stitched it all the way around the edge. And here's where I really struggled trying to get it to actually go through my machine. It took quite a bit of maneuvering and a lot of pins, and I was doing all that while also trying to hold the pleats in place, and it was a very frustrating process. But I got through it, and then just note to self, in the future, stuff the thing after you put the ruffle around the edges. It just makes things so much easier. With the ruffle all sewn on, I then took some elastic and just quickly measured around the base where it would go to see how long I needed the elastic to be when it was relaxed, and then I just took a little needle from my kids' sewing crafting kit, and I used that to push the elastic all the way around through the casing that I'd made by hemming it. And then once that was all done, I just kind of zhuzhed it all around so that it would all be nice and even, and then just sewed it shut. And with that all finished, the toadstool was done, and here is the reveal. I am so pleased with how this stool came out. I think it is so cute, and it is so nice to be able to have a nice little cushy stool that I can take with me so I can have a little sit down whenever I need to. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this, I hope that you will like and subscribe for more whimsy.